Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Radio Sophia. Today, I have one of our very dear former colleagues from Hyderabad Central University to deliver an excellent and exciting talk on Radio Sophia. So here we have with us Dr. Sipoy Sarveshwar, who is currently working as an assistant professor ad hoc at the Department of Anthropology, University of Hyderabad. And today he's going to talk about a very interesting topic, which is the culture of naming and the culture of naming and how influence of caste politics and social movements shape it. This discussion is particularly inspired from the recent Tamil movie Karnan, directed by Mari Selvan, which talks about caste discrimination and exploitation, and which actually gives us a deep insight into how the social culture of naming people is on, and a little bit more about Dr. Sepoy. So he has carried out an ethnographic study among the Newars of Kathmandu Valley, Nepal for his doctoral research. And his other broader research interests include caste studies, political development, civil society, non-kinship group formations in South Asia, and film studies. And Sipoy is currently working on his manuscript to publish his PhD dissertation. He also widely writes in a lot of social and digital media platforms in India about politics, culture, and religion. And he hopes to bridge the gap between the academic and non-academic political space through his writings. And this is his ideas are also very much in line with Radio Sophia's objectives of actually bridging this gap between the academic and non-academic space by discussing about social, economic, and political issues. So without any further ado, let me welcome Dr. Sipoy Sarveshwar for the talk today. Welcome, Sipoy.
Thank you, Kranti. Thank you so much for the Radio Sophia team as well for this opportunity. Like there are some students I can see who regularly listens to me through this social media platform as well. But yeah, they might connect to what I'm going to say better, because at one point of time I would have said this to them as a part of the classes or my observations in Indian society and all. I hope they won't find it boring. But yeah, for others, I would try to put this as non-academic as it can. I don't want to bring in theories and all. But if you think that it can be also viewed or we can also bring in, we will do that in the later section of the talk, right? So Kranti informs me that I can take about 45 minutes. I just have one image, which would be my structure of the talk today, right? So what I will do is I'll start with how I got this idea. And we all have this, anthropologists have this problem of cultural blindness, right? When we are currently in a particular culture, we don't see things, right? When you step out of that culture and view it from the outsider's point of view, you would be able to understand that culture better. So I think that's also the same with me. When I was there, I was conducting these household surveys, and as a part of it, I would have covered about 500 to 600 households in the complete year. And as a part of it, I want to know their names and so on. So when I was analyzing the data, I realized that there is a pattern to how these names have changed from generation to generation, right? For example, for our grandfather's generation, the names were very traditional, and which will also have a kind of religious tone to it, right? Very interestingly, they don't name the gods after the gods directly, right? For example, we see the names in India as Ram, Krishna, and Lakshmi. It's a direct gods, deities name that we have. But these people have a very interesting take on this. They say Ram Bhakta, like they believe that they should not name after the god directly. Like you may insult a person, that may also insult the god also, right? So they would say Ram Bhakta or Lakshmi Bhakta, right? Or they use Maya, like Ram Maya, Lakshmi Maya. These were the names that you can find within this grandparents' generation. But when you come to about, like, let's say our father's generation, the naming pattern has drastically changed, right? It went to Nuche Bahadur, right? Nuche Bahadur is a name that indicates that this particular child is born in the new house when they constructed it, right? New is new, Che is house, right? I was very intrigued because you can't name a person after a new house that you just been born into. And it is very important for them. The house is very important for them in their own day-to-day social structure or social organization per se. So it is only natural that they name after, and they don't find it much problematic in naming kids after the new house. Or they'll also, the moon is also very important for them, the full moon. We would find celebrations every full moon. Like when I was doing my field work, I would see a celebration every month on the day of the full moon, right? So you would say the names like Ramila, Timila, the red moon, the full moon, meaning is very connecting, right? And the next generation, the names were much more kind of like leading away. Anup, Purna, and Naveen, these were the names that I saw. Then the fourth generation, these are like very, maybe like the children of my friends, those I just mentioned, Anup, Purna, and Naveen, and Mahesh, and all. These people were conscious. The cultural consciousness was so much into them. There is a movement that goes on that Neva strongly believes that the state is trying to suppress their culture, and they want to revive their cultural traits, and through language and through naming patterns. So they selectively chose names which are very much Nevari culture's reflection, right? The names would be, to give some examples, would be Armana, right, and Kapuma, and Linura, right, Falista. So these were certain names which are very deep literary connection to the Nevar language and Nevar culture and all, right? And then, funnily enough, this is this set of population who are very conscious about the Nevari culture and so on. The other set of population who basically we would say not so much politically conscious, they started naming their kids very names such as King, Prince, right? And there is lovely names, because I was also associated during my fieldwork with a kindergarten school. Like there is this principal who is considered to be Navin sir, we call him, is considered to be a good scholar in Nevari culture. And also I used to have my doubts clarified, or if I'm getting something wrong, he used to explain to me. So I spent a considerable amount of time, and in the due process, I also helped him with his schoolwork, attendance marking, and entering the mark sheets and so on. So in this process, I also observed the names are very, very funny. These are kids, like we're talking about, like some 6 years or 7 year old kids. It's like, as I said, Prince and Lovely and Queen. These are the names that I saw. It's like, okay, there is this clear trend that I can see here. One is Ram Bhakta, Lakshmi Bhakta, which are religious, which says that they are the loyal or adherent devotees of the gods. Then there is this change to or how cultures connect to it, like Ramila, Timila, and then Nuche Bahadur are certain terms that they very much admire, and that is being given as a names to the kids, and followed by fashionable names, which doesn't necessarily religious, non-religious, as well as they don't have to have a cultural basing on the naming pattern, like Anup, Purna. Maybe if you dig deep in, you may also find certain connections, right? And the later culturally conscious and politically educated population wants to name their kids very much evidently to show that the naming patterns are highly linked with as a form of protest, or as a form of movement, or as a form of asserting their identity, right? And then the later, again, as I said, politically less conscious, but they also have a politics behind, right? They don't want to fall in the same category of naming, right? And they want to their children to shine away from this naming pattern and so on, right? And the naming is very important when you look very deep into it. Sadly, that we don't get to choose our names, right? It always reflects our parents' political consciousness, or our parents' political. I think that's their right to give us our names as the parents that they are, right? And we would also like, we would see very, very, very rarely people who would like to change their names in due course of time through gadget and all, right? Which we don't has the right to choose our name, but it becomes an identity to us, right? When we look deep, when someone asks you, the first thing we say is not our profession, not our interest, not our anything. Who are you? We will generally say our name, right? Our name is identity, right? I was thinking, what if something happens and I hurt my head and I forget my name? What will happen to me? Who will I be? Right? This is a question which we will all ponder. So name is very, very important. A name is highly political. That is what the whole lecture is going to be, right? And it's also a political statement, right? Like if you say, as I spoke in my article, that the left lenient are the people who are from either in Andhra or in Tamil Nadu very consciously named their children after left names. Recently, there is this one particular news item that is taking rounds in the media, that communism is getting married to Mamata Banerjee and Leninism and socialism are attending the marriage, because it's very, like I went through this document. It's very interesting to see how people, and even the person who named his 3 children after communism, socialism, Leninism, is hoping that his grandchildren will be named after Cubaism, right? It's interesting to see how it's a political statement from the point of our parents. And when we say political, it can also include religious, right? It can also include your educational status. It can also include your social awareness. It can also include your assertion of what you are denied of, right? As a culture, as a society, as a historical factors that play an important role in it, right? And when we clearly see nowadays what's happened is we tend to get this caste to everything, right? As we strongly believe, caste is not only we are born into it, it basically lives with us, it dies with us, and even if you die also, it doesn't leave you. The caste doesn't actually leave you even after your death, right? And we see vehicle names like very pompously portrayed. The backside of the rear windows were written their caste names, and sometimes I wonder like what all we associate, like the vehicles also has castes, and what all has caste is a very interesting thing to see. There is this Quint has come up with how in Rajasthan and in Haryana and all, how they Jat people who tried to buy cars and all very pompously portray their names, and how it has become, even Haryana government I think has an act saying that you can't print your cash name and you will be fined. And when the Quint reporter was asking them, they were saying it's a very much a social capital, right? They say others panga mat lete hain, right? Naam dekh ke dar jate hain, right? And they can have access, and even if there is a police and someone, like they also like let go of them if they are like caught in doing some unlawful activities and so on, right? So it's highly political statement. The naming is very important, right? And when we see examples across the globe, right? For example, Nelson Mandela was the South African apartheid revolutionary leader, anti-apartheid revolutionary leader, was given the name by Christian missionaries because his original name was considered not Christian enough, right? We see like how the leader of that charisma was also like related with this naming and how he was affected with that. And similarly, to take the examples of Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, the heavyweight champion and Black rights movement participants, they questioned the names that were given by related to slavery, right? And Malcolm X said that the name that I was given was highly related to slavery, so I'm not going to use it. I would prefer to call it. I would call it X. I would call it. I don't want a surname at all, so I would go with the X name, right? And then Muhammad Ali's surname, like the family name indicates Clay, right? Clay is how you related to working with mud and cotton fields. So he also rejected it. He said, I will convert to Islam and hence I will be known as Muhammad Ali. These are very powerful statements. The changing of names across the, and recently Elon Musk named his child with some equations, right? Everyone was like taken back and to just, they're surprised to see like how are you pronounced, and it's a question that he was posed wherever he went. And there is this one attempt by China to give numbers to their citizens, right? There was a movement in China saying that we are not numbers and we want our names to be retained. So naming is like, we can see across the globe, there is this, how this naming patterns, it's not only to the Indian society, but also the naming is highly considered or should be considered to be a political one, right? And then coming to what basically triggered me to write this or even to share this particular thoughts of mine in this Radio Sophia is Karnan movie, right? I don't know if all of you have watched it. For those who haven't, let me just give you a brief about it. Karnan movie is, I would say, one of the very politically correct movies that I have watched in Indian movies in a very, very long time. Apart from other movies where there is this upper caste hero that comes to save the day of the Dalit, not that kind of behavior is seen in this. The Dalit is owning up the cause and he's fighting for his self-respect, and he's standing up and he's fighting, and this is all done in a much more real sense, right? And the movie is so beautiful in the way that it is so much of symbolism, right? There is this donkey that is the front legs have been tied, and there is this headless Buddha or Jain statues. You can see there is an elephant, there is a horse, right? Which was denied, and you keep seeing that for riding an horse, Dalits were beaten up, and it's also a form of protest in Gujarat, Rajasthan, UP, Bihar, and these places where the Dalits want to go to approach police for seeking permission that they would like to ride their horse in the Bharat of their marriages and all. They would want police protection. Even it happened with our own in our own Andhra Pradesh also. There is this one case where the groom wants to get the bride in a very grand procession, and the parents of the groom belongs to Dalit family, so they thought they will just ask the villagers for permission. So they approached and they didn't. They were denied. So this guy, the groom, was highly political. He said, "I'm not taking this anymore." So he went to the SP and he said, "I am doing it. I need a protection." Right. So I saw this documentary where there were 2,000 policemen mobilized, right, in order to keep this procession, which is very, very sad state, in fact, for if you there is nothing to be pride about. But there were more number of people from the police side than the groom or bride's relatives for the marriage. So it was it's a form of kind of symbolisms that were asserting their rights and saying that like a fight for equality is being very much portrayed in this movie. And the one very important that is very relevant for this talk is the naming patterns that we see in the movie, right? To start with, the hero's name, Dhanush name is Karnan, right? And Karnan, we know, like, is sided with Kauravas, but he's very generous and he's very kind-hearted person. He stood, irrespective of whether morally correct or no, with what he believed as those are good to him, right? In the whole story, we don't have an opinion about Karna. You can say Dhritarashtra is bad and Dharmaraju or Bhima is good because you have been told to see so. But Karna is always kept in that limbo, whether Karna is a good because he's a Pandava, part of the Pandava, right? Whether he fought and he supported Kauravas, but he's a good person. At the same time, he's with bad persons, quote unquote, right? So we were always kept in limbo. It's not like we can have a opinion about Karna. The Karna name itself is like very interesting for the movie. Then the other characters such as Vadamalayan and Draupadi, the heroine name is Draupadi, Karnan and Draupadi. There is a myth that Draupadi fancies Karna in Mahabharata, right? And Shubhadra, the Karnan's mother's name is Shubhadra, and there is Duryodhana in the movie, right? And there is Yaman, the god of death, and there is these mythological characters that were there. And just because they had this type of names and they held their head high in the movie, the upper caste, apparently the upper caste IPS officer who is called as Kannabiran comes to this village for an inquiring about a vandalism act, and he asked them to come to station for giving. It's almost like the case will be nothing, but he makes it a big issue by subjecting them to custodial torture, right? And the whole movie revolves around it, right? It triggered it basically these observations which I had in my field, and then when I watched this movie, I thought I should at least like put in words about what I think about this culture of naming. So that's a triggering point for me. And as I said, we can watch and we can read the more on the about the symbolism and all about Karnan. But I thought I'll also use this opportunity to just throw some light on several cultural aspects that we have in Indian culture and how we can see them as political entities and all, right? So the caste becomes so integral to our naming patterns, right? For example, the more you go into Bengal society, UP, Bihar, right? You find caste names even for the lower caste, even for the upper caste. It's a suffix that has to come, right? The moment you say only your name, they will ask. Even I was in Bihar in one of my friend's house in 2008. I told them my name is Sarveshwar. right? They were asking Sarveshwar kya, right? They were expecting me to say, because it's culturally, they were so trained to hear the caste names following your given names. And I said, like, Sarveshwar hai. I thought they're asking my family name. I said Sipai. They thought Sipai is the caste name, and they were like little confused. And it's like, ye pura dusra matlab hai. They were like it became a very funny instance when I was just mere telling the name, right? And we see Gujarat is a another very interesting naming pattern you can observe, right? For example, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, like the nationalist leader as portrayed by BJP currently, the Vallabhbhai, you can say, and then the former chief minister and the current governor of Rajasthan, Anandi Behen, right? And then even our own prime minister's name is Damodar Das Bhai Narendra Modi. Bhai is Bhai and Behen for men and women were considered to be used as suffixes, right? I was improved to understand more, and then I was asking people, and it's also especially followed by OBC caste, right? And it is not followed by the upper Brahmin caste and other caste groups or Marwadi caste groups, and but it's mostly by the OBCs who had this economic and political chances to bring to elevate their social status, but they also used namings in order to elevate their status. So if I want to call you, I will definitely has to call you Behanare Bai. So it's like given that I will make it part of my name, right? And similar trends can also be observed in Maharashtra. The Bai is being used, and then Maharashtra again is another very interesting caste name that the moment someone says Kar, right? Savarkar or Manjrekar, Tendulkar, Kar is a term that we associate with Brahmin caste in Maharashtra. And then Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh is again another interesting stories, which I will keep touching upon as I belong to these both societies, right? And Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, there is another pattern of which I also discussed in the paper that people name 2-3 names, right? Venkata Sai, Teja, right? This is my friend's name. And when I asked him, can I use it? He was like, you're using my name for your as a subject and all. We had a very funny conversation. Yes, but when you see deeply, this became a trend at one point, right? If you see around your Telugu friends, just ask them. They wouldn't tell you one name. They would give you 2-3 names in a go, right? You would be really surprised. And it also happened as a part of discussion in my class that why Telugu people have 2-3 names, and I was more inquiring about it, and it's also adapted as a double or triple protection from the deities for the children, right? And there is also highly under under 5 age deaths that happen within these societies that they are scared. And even if you look closely at the Brahmin ceremonies conducted by for the Upanayana ceremony, the child will be considered only adult after 8 years, and the Upanayana ceremony is done only after 8 years. And if he dies before that, they don't need to follow death pollution and so on, which has some liberty or some excuses to be followed, which is very interesting to see how under death, under 5 year death was playing a very important role in even naming people and how they sought divine intervention in divine protection from death or anything else. And some people said it's to confuse the Lord of Yama, right? If you have 2-3 names, he don't know where to register, what to register, and even if he wants to take it, he would definitely confuse. A very wonderful explanations and open for interpretation. Someone may say no, someone may say yes, this may not be possible. Like, so that's what I found it very beautiful about this inquiring about. And Kerala, as we see, like the repeated communist governments and the political education they had, you wouldn't find much caste names, and but they will also have village names. Our own friends from campus used to have certain family names that basically also the place of their coming, right? And Bengal is again very interesting. There is another very interesting thing about Bengal is that they will all have a pet name, right? You will any Bengali or Oriya you see, you will have another name for them. There will be a name that was officially given to them, but there will also be a pet name, I would say, right? And that also can be understood. And UP Bihar is another example that we can see how the caste names, as I already said, comes to invariably you have to use the caste names, and there is no much family names, but they will be differentiated by their gotras by inquiring. It is not like the gotra name follows in the form of naming pattern, but they would definitely have this Jat or any other caste names that runs through or attached to the given names as a suffix, right? Punjab again, the moment the Sikh revolution, the Sikh religion was happening, all people were given Singh and women were preferred to have Kaur, queen, or that's the interpretation that one can see. Punjab again used this naming for how they can actually elevate their status, the social status, in the form of like when the Sikh gurus were thinking about social reformation or social elevation status, they started with naming pattern. Hum Singh lagayenge ab se, and then we will also give our women the Kaur, so that no one can humiliate, no one can insult them in the manner that they were subjected to historically and socially, right? So but there is this. You can also go around and observe such naming patterns across the cultures, much more go into deeper levels, right? I'm not touching into them, right? And uh, apparently we can also categorize the names as religious names, right? You can see a religion. My name itself is a religious reference. My father wanted me to have a Shiva name, right? And you can see many people coming from religious families. The parents were highly religious, so they would go to the extent of naming their children after the gods and thinking that they are respecting or naming their child after the deities. So we can see the religious names in a much more, and there is a modernity also that was chosen out of religious names or mythological names that we can observe. And evidently, non-religious names, there are people who questioned this pattern of non-religiousness, religious names being given to the children, and they went on to name. I can say many people here, Kranti, Niti, or Sujana, that are evidently non-religious names, and basically they would also go to the extent of questioning this whole pattern of why we should name after religion and why, because this, I am very sure they are educated, they are getting educated at the time of where we are contemplating secularism, and because our parents' generation, that particular argument is keep on coming out about secularism and then religious influence within the society. We were or at least we were aiming to become a modern societies, trying to diverse from the religious clutches of it, right? So I would see these as a political standpoints of our parents to name us and very selectively choose to name us after non-religious names, right? And this particularly, like the whole pattern of naming, when you see, I keep saying as a political statement or a political, the politics involved with the naming is like, for example, benefits the upper caste, right? In one of the book by Sukhdev Thorat, right? Castes, I'm sorry, I forgot the book name. Contested Hierarchies, right? There is an edited volume. The book title is Contested Hierarchies. Sukhdev Thorat argues, and they basically, he's a JNU professor and former UGC chairman, and he basically conducts some experiment, right? He, for every classified, he took papers and he chose 50 companies to apply for, and for every classified vacancy he found, and he has generated 6 CVs, right? And the 6 CVs had 6 different names, which are very evidently, one is upper caste, one is lower caste, one is Muslim name, one is woman name, one is Christian name, which one is OBC name. And for every position, they have sent 6 applications, and they have estimated the mere chance of getting called for an interview. And I think it should not be a surprise for us that most of the people from upper caste were preferred to be interviewed, and they also very systematically or scientifically have ensured that this upper caste is just meeting the demands of the job, and the other caste groups, which are other names, which are also maybe overqualified or has a very high grades, but they were evidently are invariably denied the chance to be called for an interview, right? Which shows like it basically helps the upper caste to evoke the social capital that they have been sitting on, right? And it's very evident, right? You would find why there is no other explanation why would we flaunt our caste names on the cars or bikes or any other vehicles, because we know that this is helping us, and this is getting into places, this is giving us business, and it may also help you to get a job. There is also rumor that Reddy Labs hire only Reddys, right? Which is maybe a rumor, as I said, which I don't have any evidence to suggest that, but it's we are very sure that upper caste wanted these names to be attached. And strangely so, when I basically take attendance in the classes also, I note that most of the women students, most of the female students also now have the caste names, especially from the dominant castes of Telugu-speaking region. I always wonder whether they had their mothers or grandmothers had these names. And some of my students who found out and they said, no, sir, our mothers and grandmothers didn't have this. It's a very recent addition, I would say, right? The moment you realize caste is helping you in getting it out and it operates in your mind, right? Obviously, I would want to name my kid with Reddy, Naidu, Chaudhary, because that is definitely helping them. So this benefits the upper caste, right? And it also manages to keep the lower caste in their own place, quote unquote, if you want to use the term, right? And the moment I see an lower caste name, I know I'm not trusting, because we have this systematized this discrimination, right? We know by mere seeing the caste name, we affiliate certain stereotypes, we judge the people based on their caste, and hence we won't give the job, right? Forget about the marriage. We won't give the job at all, or even allow them to entertain into our houses and so on, right? So this also becomes very important. That's why they insist that you keep your caste names, right, within your own for your given names, right? To mark it out, to just avoid you, to make the discrimination much more systematic and much more evident and much more clear. मतलब क्यों struggle करें, नाम पता करो, सब कुछ पता हो जाएगा, right? So this has become a kind of problematic, right? And you can also see in Telugu speaking regions, there is this another trend of, I have never seen this family names, which was given, which also has for the most of the Telugus, is also very interesting to see, because again, within the family names, the upper caste family names are always respectful, right? And if you see most of the Dalit or any other OBC caste groups, names would be after their caste groups are a derogatory or demeaning in nature, right? So for the non-Telugus here, the family names generally come from either a famous personality or a place of migration or the job that any one of your ancestors might have done and got the name. In another sense, your family name matters a lot, especially in a village setup. If you want to go to someone else's place, they won't know the given names of your place of the place you are going, but they would ask you, what is the family name? Inti peru, we call it very in a literal translation, right? And they would recognize you based on that. And when you look very closely, you would see all the upper caste or the dominant caste groups that we have always have the respectful quote unquote names, right? Tripuraneni or any Nenis and that sort. And when it comes to the lower caste, right? When we look closely, it's a pattern that was enforced upon them, right? You can't have a very respectful term. You are a lower caste and you stick to the demeaning aspect of it, and then if you try to change, you will be subjected to caste violence. But the moment the dominant caste can claim, because they basically has the capital to change their names to much more respectful names, and you can change, right? And but the lower caste can't. So that's another caste politics that one can observe within surnames that we have, right? And the family names in the Tamil society, for example, is very interestingly had caste names, right? They were Gounder or any other caste names that were associated, especially with the dominant caste. And because of Periyar and Anna and DMK politics or Dravidian politics that are very deep rooted within Tamil Nadu, they questioned this pattern and they said, let's let go of these caste names. And it is very quite evident now that in none of the celebrities, right? They wouldn't have our MPs or anyone of their stature. You may find in a very local places like Pandi, this kind of names that are still exhibiting the caste names. But the moment you come into public forum, it is not expected from you. It was so normalized that to use your caste name, they feel insulted and they feel not okay. So they would let go of their caste names within the Tamil society, right? And but to see from the other point of view, those who don't subscribe to the Dravidian politics sustained their names, and they evidently maintained their names to their caste names to follow within this as a form of resistance to Dravidian movement. Iyer, Iyengar, you can keep seeing these names popping out here and there, and they wouldn't potentially subscribing to Dravidian politics. So they don't, they take it as a badge of honor to put a resistance to Dravidian politics or this whole anti-caste or anti Brahmanism that we see in Dravidian politics. right? And then we see that, and again, when coming back to Karnan movie, why does the director or any of the most of the oppressed classes prefer to have names that were highly mythological in character? There is this book by Kalyan Rao, The Untouchable Spring, right? Antarani Vasantam is a very wonderful book that he published, and it has been translated into many languages, a very well received book. I would strongly recommend people to read it. The Untouchable Spring is the English translation, English version of the book. In that, he argues about how the street player Veedi Bhagavatam, there is a separate caste, subcaste for the Dalits who are dedicated for street plays, right? They would play this Mahabharata, Ramayana stories. So if there is a girl child that is born to their families, they were given a mythological character, Sisireka, and the other names, Sesikala, and these type of mythological names, and they ensure that those names are pronounced very clearly. Is also, I mentioned this in this thing. If you just ask why, right? Because we were told by Ambedkar writings and teachings that Hinduism denied the equal status to the Dalits. But why do we have this, right? It's nothing but is a process of imitation, right? In order to elevate your status, there are two, three ways that you follow. One is imitate, that is Sanskritization. The another is resistance, that you go against what is being told that you are, right? Or what is being denied to you, you probably take as a form of imitation, right? Like that's what I would find as a possible explanation for people having the names that were considered to be quote unquote Sanskritic or mythologically quote unquote that would potentially give higher image for themselves, right? They would imitate, and it's also a naming of assertion, right? And then we would potentially also claim that why am I not equal, right? Why shouldn't I be having that name? So I would, when the situation allows, is a very, very important factor, right? If you happens to anger, quote unquote, the upper caste, you would be subjected to the caste violence, and you would need to have a favorable conditions in order to even put up as a resistance. Being a rebellious is highly a matter of privilege, right? And so people really had to check for the certain situations that are allowing them to be being rebellious or assert their identities or assert their lost respect, or to regain their lost respect. Rightly, the Constitution assured them our economic mobility that was allowed by modernization of the economy, that freed them from the caste clutches, had facilitated this kind of naming, that kind of changes that we see within the lower caste, to put it as a assertion and as a resistance also, right? And so I would conclude this with the statement saying that naming is highly political, right? We look around and we dig deep in, and it's highly political. That's why I thought it is so much as a cultural phenomena to observe and to understand within our own Indian society, right? And so I would stop it here. I would again reassert that it is a highly a political phenomena which is deep rooted in our culture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sipai. It has been like an exciting talk and something very subconscious, but it's very everywhere around us. We generally don't tend to think about it or observe it. And when you are talking, I just thought the importance of this topic, I mean, which we generally tend to ignore. Karnan certainly has also made me think there were so many layers to it, and definitely one most important layer in the movie was also about naming. And I just want to mention one instance, like when you're talking about Telugu speaking states and especially upper caste people, especially Reddis or Chowdhuris or Naidus, want to name their children in a certain way. A year ago, I had a conversation with a close friend of mine, and she belongs to a Reddy community from Telangana. She did not want to name her daughters, she did not want to add the word Reddy in the name. But her husband insisted. saying no, we have to add this because it's very important, otherwise how will their identity be known to the world? And they had a lot of fights, issues, and eventually she had to give in. Probably this is again another gender aspect within the relationship. She yielded to that, and so now both her daughters have the name Reddy, but she doesn't. Her name doesn't have Reddy anywhere. Even her husband's name did not have Reddy. But now they've realized it's important. And even I, certain places, whenever I go, any other Andhra person, just by my family name, would identify my caste and ask directly over my face, do you belong to so and so community? So I would, initially, when I was a kid, I would be surprised, I would be shocked. How do you know? But now that I've grown up, I can see it's very much ingrained, and then a certain identification is happening based on the names. Okay, with this, I open the floor to a lot of questions or any comments. You can either chat, post your questions in the chat box, which I can take it up, or you can raise your hand and you can directly ask the speaker. Uh, just yes, Shailendra, please go ahead.
Hey, thanks for the wonderful talk. Talking of Bihar, I come from erstwhile Bihar. Now it's Bihar and Jharkhand split. So I'm telling you about something interesting. Just 2 or 3 things in caste names in Bihar. One is there is a particular caste name called Chaudhary. Okay, and the interesting thing is that this last name is shared throughout the hierarchy, right from Brahmin to Shudra. Okay, so so you would find a Brahmin who is a Chaudhary, and you will find a Kshatriya, you will find a Vaishya, you will find a Kayastha, and you will find a down to Dalit using this surname Chaudhary. So I'll tell you what is the history behind it. But that's another example which is called Singh. So Singh is predominantly a Kshatriya family name, but that again has been used by so many caste groups right down the hierarchy. So now just trying to, maybe it's a matter of study, but just giving my hypothesis about it as I, have lived through this. So what happens is that the phenomena of Sanskritization that you told was happening in names also, right? But it was difficult to assume Brahmin names, because if you assume only the Brahmin name, you don't have the sacred thread, right? The other markers you don't have. Similarly, for Vaishya, again, the main marker is your family business, which you don't have. The easiest was to assume a Kshatriya name or Kshatriya identity, because for that, you have to only claim that some of your ancestors fought valiantly against some oppressor, right? So some folk story that one of your ancestors of your caste fought valiantly against some oppressor, and we are actually a particular form of Kshatriya. So this Singh surname, which was used by Kshatriya earlier, now in Bihar, you will find being used across the hierarchy. So, so that explains Singh, but doesn't explain Chaudhary, which starts right from Brahmins to Dalit. Okay. Another phenomena that happened in my generation when we were kids, most of my classmates would be Kumar. Okay, as I am. Kumar is a casteless surname. It's difficult to identify the caste. So people still ask me, so what is your father's name then? So because you can't identify my caste through my name, so you will ask my father's name. That happens in trains also. When you go to Bihar, they end up asking my father's name. So Kumar is again, but one pattern you will find that for sure the person who is asking this, he is sure that, okay, if he is Kumar, at least he is not a Brahmin. Otherwise, he would not have hidden his surname, right? So you could be anything, but not Brahmin. So that much identity it can give, and that much identity it hides. So these are the two interesting things, maybe a matter of study for people who are interested in this.
Yeah. Thank you, Shailendra. Like just to add to you, it's also adapted highly by people who are migrated. For example, within the village, you will not be allowed to do. For example, the lower caste will not be allowed to put Chaudhary names. They will be subjected to the caste violence. The moment you migrate to other village, other place where you are not, where your history or social history doesn't follow you, you would feel like, why shouldn't I name? Right. So this particular trend is observed, and I would also I basically it slipped out of my mind. Right, when I was doing field work, when I was going through the stone inscriptions that were there in the village where I conducted field work. These stone inscriptions dated back to 200, 100 years ago also, on the public places called chivas or falchas that are there in the village. None of the people had caste names. Right now, if you go into this Nepali community or even Nepali society, you would find caste names invariably attached as their suffixes to their names. Right. So, like the 100 years ago, this is not the condition. This is not the situation. But why did people felt like they needed to have caste names into included in their names? Is the reason, again, as I said, how the politics changes and how the time and space determines also plays a very important role. Thank you, Shailendra. That was very interesting to note how Chaudhary and Singh was adapted across the cultures. And I didn't know about the Kumar thing. Thanks for letting me know. Thank you.
Thanks, Shailendra. Shailendra is a doctoral student at IIM Calcutta. Yeah. So now we have another question from Devendra Kumar. Devendra, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hello, Professor. I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible. Devendra,
Yes.
Please introduce yourself briefly and ask your question. Yeah.
Okay, I'm Devendra Kumar. I'm a postgraduate journalism student at Central University of Tamil Nadu, and I'm like looking for PhD in Madurai Kamara University in film and cultural studies. So I'm doing research on caste and Tamil cinema. So this film Karnan was one of my film in the list. So first of all, I would like to share my personal experience of because my native is Tamil Nadu. So as sir mentioned about the Tevar caste and other submissive caste groups across Tamil Nadu, my name is named like Devendra. I think as a diligent scholar of anthropology, sir must know about the name Devendra, which belongs to Devendra Verala, so ST community in Tamil Nadu. Though I belong to as intermediate caste group, my family name as Devendra, which is actually a reminiscent of a person who belongs to submissive. So I, when I was going for any other event or any public discussion like this, which is conducting within Tamil Nadu, I personally was affected by the name. Though I belong to intermediate caste, I was supposed to be sidelined by my name. And as when it comes to the actual Karnan film, I think it's a very clear anthropological representation of a community called Pandlas in Tamil Nadu. Their assertive kind of representation in the particular film, and they have mentioned about many other real incidents that happened in Tirunelveli and Thoothukudi regions, districts of Tamil Nadu. And I just want to ask a question to Professor that, sir, if I am doing an anthropological research based on the film to relate their cultural element, their casteist backgrounds and other social settings belongs to the caste group, how can I go and find, or what are the elements should I look upon for my like a doctoral study or something like that?
Very interesting, Devendra. I'm not sure whether I'll be able to answer that, but the elements to look for is, like, for example, look for political events that had happened, right? You need to see these movies that come is highly in relation with what are the famous political movements that have taken place, right? Let me just elaborate further. For example, the BJP, the rise of the BJP has gave rise to, there was this article on Caravan, I guess, how Akshay Kumar has become a Hindutva poster boy, and how the whole movies, like for example, Kangana Ranaut, and everyone was portraying as if like they fought for independence and they are the ones the reason for getting us the freedom from the British clutches and all. The patriotic, nationalistic tendencies are highly portrayed, and it became a part of genre that how the Bollywood adapted in the recent days, right? That's because the rise of the Hindutva has to see in correlation. Like, for example, down the line 20 years, if any student of film studies or anthropology wants to understand, they would want to has to connect it to the BJP, right? In the similar manner, when you see, for example, in the piece that I wrote, there is this movie, Satyaraj's movie. I forgot the movie title. I'm sorry. Satyaraj was a there.
Amedi Padai?
Amedi Padai? No, I don't think so. His name is Baludevar, right? That kid, like who's a Brahmin kid who lost his parents, and Satyaraj raises him. Satyaraj is a Periyarist, by the way, and he raises him, and he was trying to carry him across the river, and he kept saying Baludevar, Baludevar, and that kid, after getting out of the river and standing on the bank of the river, he asks him, you keep saying there is no caste, and you are open for raising or going with any caste, but you keep saying yourself Devar. Is Devar education, right? If you see, and subsequent movies that had come up are highly as a kind of reflection of what is happening in the politics of the state, right? Anti-caste and articulations, how Karunanidhi or Anna or Periyarism that was very much discussed. And I wouldn't find any other political space than Dravidian politics to use movies as an art form to ascertain their politics and take into people in a deeper level. Right? It was in their hands. If you look back, that Tamil Nadu politics was governed by people from movie industry. So it's like it goes both hand in hand. Similarly, when you see the Devar Magan that had come in, the Kamal Hassan's Devar Magan was considered to be the first movie to kind of romanticize and normalize the upper caste representation within the movies, followed which a lot of movies that had come saying that like they were festivals and Madurai and this kind of romanticizing, even for example, this Chinna Gounder. If you see, there is this like the caste elements, the names are the ones which you need to look for. The second thing is not like the recent Paranjit and Mari Selvarajan's movies, but the earlier movies were always like sliding with the upper caste because they are the ones who are producing and directing and comes from these regions. So I'm not sure whether I'm answering your question. What are the elements to look for? I don't know. If we could get in touch, I would definitely get in connected to other scholars that are working and who would guide you better. I'm sorry, I may not be able to tell you the elements that you should look for, but to start with the names of the movies and political events, as well as the connection between the both and the trend that keeps following. Nowadays, if you see, Dhanush has taken up representing lower caste, and he keeps doing it. Asuran is one, and Karnan is another, and where he I think he did a good job in representing those characters. I would say look for those and how caste is being operated, and I'm sure you will do a very great job, Devendra. That's very interesting to know. You are trying to see caste in films, which is much needed area to study. I would connect you to, there is this comrade of mine, Mukesh, who is doing the nationalistic tendencies or patriotism within the Hindi movies, right? I'm sure he would help you with some literature, and you can discuss with him as well. I can keep in touch with you.
Thank you, Sukhoi. There's a question in the chat from Himabindu Pottumothu. So she was asking, how do you understand the pride of people of lower sections, predominantly, claiming their names and surnames now? Is it significantly found in Telugu states now? Do you think it is because of people coming to power and them becoming privileged? So she's like, just a personal observation, speaker may disapprove of the argument.
I don't think it's just because they have become privileged that they are trying to portray their names. For example, you chide them and you brand them as being lower for what they are, and the identity in itself is being questioned, and the society keeps imposing upon them that it is not even worth telling it out aloud, right? So what happens is it becomes assertion, right? Why shouldn't I, right? When a Brahmin can assert his name, when an upper caste can assert his name, why can't I assert, right? And again, I would say this is a forms of assertion, part of politics, part of social movements that takes place. Where even, for example, in Telangana, Mandakrishna Madiga is one example where very much openly claims his identity and he wants to take this assertion. Why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I feel proud about being my caste name? Because if the caste is not going anywhere, let me kind of take it as an identity, badge of honor. Why should I basically leave away my identity, right? When other can like this is another way of accession politics, right? For example, Ambedkar is one example that I can give. He wore coat. He were very well dressed. He was well dressed, well read. He was never giving away for anyone that said you can't do this, right? So like it's a kind of accession that comes from there, right? The moment upper caste or the system says you can't do it, you would put up a fight saying that why can't I? Why shouldn't I? I will, right? So that's a politics that I take, as I don't think it's because they have become privileged that they are now asserting their identity, but it is a part of movement. I don't think anywhere soon that we are going to annihilate this caste and we become that becomes a privileged or underprivileged question. I don't think that's an unending story. That's keep on repeating, right? So that's my take, Bindu. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think
We have
Priyadarshini
Priyadarshini Yuvraj. Yeah, please go ahead, Priyadarshini. Briefly introduce yourself and ask the question.
Okay, this is Priyadarshini Yuvraj. I am doing MA in Political Science, and I just want to give a question, kind of personal, but my native is Tamil Nadu. But since I was born and brought up in Mumbai, my parents chose to put a surname after my name. But when I was in standard 10, I watched this movie about Periyar, and I came to know the surname that I was holding was not right to reveal the identity and about the whole Periyar movement. So when I was in school itself, I made a gadget and made sure that I got my surname removed. I just wrote a letter to the gadget office that somebody else's surname has been put in my name because my parents were not allowing me to do that. So I got it removed. But now, since I'm dating a guy from Telangana and we are planning to get married, this guy has a surname, and I completely oppose the surname thing because I don't want it. Like that's where the caste system comes from. So this guy holds a surname called Tirumala, and I'm like, I don't want to put that surname. I don't believe in. And this is what my partner says. In Telangana, we don't see caste. But I was like, then who are Reddys and who are Kapus? Then they are bigger than us. How did you know if you are not identifying each other with your surnames, then how could you identify that he's lower, he's higher? Then he's like, no, we still don't see caste. Then right now, after I heard you talking about the movies and things, I just want to ask, are there cinemas in Telugu that are talking about caste system, or are there any radical movies coming out that are like that are teaching people or informing people about the evils of caste system that exist? Because I got to know because of a movie. That's when I took this step. But to them, I don't know how to understand because they say it doesn't exist, but then they know it exists somewhere in grassroots level. So I just want to understand it from that perspective, how Telugu cinema works. Because there are all Dagubatis and Akinenis and Potininis, but I don't see anyone without surname.
Right. Priyadarshini, thank you so much. And it's very interesting that you have changed your name to through budget and you put up a resistance very well, right? All right. So there are two things that I would like to answer. The surnames are not affiliated with the caste is a very misunderstanding from Telugu speaking region, right? People generally say, oh no, like the moment we remove our caste names, no one will know. Is a understatement, is a misunderstanding. The moment you say, like if you are a very observant about caste names and caste things and all, that is why they insist on your family names. For example, if you see, as you said, Akineni, Tripuraneni, Nandamuri, right, and Kalvakontla and Eluri Sandenti, these are the names that basically indicates that you belongs to a dominant caste, right? For example, there are surnames such as Kummari, right, and there is a caste name for one of my friend called Mala because of after his caste, right, which basically indicates that they come from very marginalized sections and being subjected to oppression, right? So like if you are a seasoned observer of caste names, you would identify a upper caste family name in a bit, just like that, right? So I don't think it is the caste surnames family names doesn't have caste. I don't want to subscribe to that. I would strongly feel, yes, the family names are evidently meant to say that they were affiliated with the caste names. Otherwise, they don't insist on it, right? Yes, there is this uh, Telugu movies to say. Sadly, what I would there are some suggestions that are popping out from multiple Telugu people about saying how the movies that basically were giving you some understanding. But my take is there are not enough movies, right? I'm very sorry for Telugu people, and also I'm also a Telugu, so I can also not be so apologetic about it, because I demand a better art form in the form of movies from the Telugu industry. I'm highly critical about Telugu movies, right? I would take, there are 4 families that are controlling each and every aspect of filming, right? And they wouldn't allow any art movies, any social awareness movies that come out, right? The 4 families were Chiranjeevi, Balakrishna, and Mahesh Babu, and this Dagubati, Venkatesh, and these families that are basically very much strongly putting up resistance. They control distribution, they control production, they control theaters, they control everything, right? The moment they realize that someone is trying to come out with a wonderful movie, they would basically, and basically that's also very important. For example, Paranjit and other representations, Dalit representations that came in Tamil movies had made sure that the movies revolve around the caste question, caste identities and all. But here you wouldn't find much. And even if you want to sustain in the given situations in the Telugu industry, you may have to conceal your identity. You may have to not go into that argument which angers the. I think it's pretty much same as it operates in the villages, that also operates in the movie industry, right? There are certain movies, as we said, Dorasani. There is this Malapilla, which is very old, right? I would find movies of social relevance came at that time, right? And there is this NTR song, Nidra Lechindi Mahila Lokam, is a song which was sung for generations by Telugu people to say how they were so progressive and asking for women to rise up, right? After that, we came up with all rubbish movies like Jambalakadi Pamba and all, which basically turned the whole gender question into a very laughing stock, right? This guy E.V. Satyanarayana is, I would say, should be held accountable for his movies, throughout his movies, to the gender roles that we see currently in Telugu society, Telugu films, right? So I wouldn't be much look for caste in Telugu. That's also highly connected with, as I said, the movies has to be a political movement. That's that the in my piece also, I was trying to hint on how politics is highly connected with what form of art that comes out, right? The Dravidian politics, as I said, Periyar or Anna, or even for example MGR, Karunanidhi, these people, when they basically put out like they basically also want to take out the ideological standpoints, right? If you see Karunanidhi's writing, it is very much strong questioning about God and equality, social justice and movement. But I don't see any kind of such movements happened in Telugu. I may be wrong, please correct me, and I would love to stand corrected. There were no such language movements. Yes, there was Atma Gauravam proposed by NTR when he wants to enter into politics as a criticism for the Congress insulting Telugu people, and he came to power. But there is no much thing that has done for revival of the Telugu. What happened in Tamil is they desanskritized it. They went ahead in kind of making people name, like for example, the names I see in Tamil Arasan, Tamil Arasi, right? I like just imagine those names in Telugu, because like the language operates in a different way for bilinguals or someone. I immediately want to imagine a name, Telugu Raja, right? Tamil Arasan is basically is a king of Tamil language. Tamil Isai, the governor which we have, is like you are like Tamil Arasan, Tamil Isai, Tamil Arasi, right? And Kanimoli, Tirunavakarasu, right? This Tirunavakarasu is the one with sweet words or good words, right? Or the one that comes good words out of his mouth, right? We won't find this type of names at all. Telugu Rani, Telugu Raja ante chala, ante maybe if they would have made it as a political movement, it would have sounded very interesting. But now I don't think that is appealing for many of the Telugu people. So I would say don't look much into films in Telugu because it has a lot of other political issues. And that's also another reason Telugu societies are considered to be highly political caste-wise, right? You wouldn't find any kind of social movements that are revolving around it, which should be, which is very sad. Yeah, that's why you see mostly the political confinement happens only within few caste groups in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. But very intriguing, very interesting to see how you are putting up resistance with your names. Thank you, Priyadarshini.
Just a last point, sorry.
Yes, yes,
Like somebody told about this surname Reddy, that somebody's partner insisted that their kids should have the surname Reddy. But I truly believe in this thing. If we are the people who talk about activism, we should be the one who are doing it, like be the change that we want. Similar situation happened with me, and I made a pact very clear that if I am not going to take the last name because I don't believe in it, and even after getting married, if you are planning to give that family name or any name to the kids, sorry, we are not marrying. Like if this is happening, then this is not happening. If that's how annihilation of caste happens, like somebody have to do it, and if we are not walking the talk, then no use. Like, so just wanted to say, like, if we are talking activism, then it would be good to do it on a grassroots level, then makes change.
true, true, very true, Priyadarshini. I totally agree with you. We should all do what we can and within our own limitations, I would say. Yes. And yes, I really appreciate your resistance towards this caste and trying to do your part in annihilating it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So now that we're falling short of time, I would, okay. If the speaker is fine, we can just extend the session by like 10 more minutes. I think I see 3 questions. Okay, yeah.
I think so.
Okay, fine. So Niyati, please go ahead. And after Niyati, we will have Himadri with his final question. I think there was somebody, Chandrasekhar, who wanted to ask a question. So these 3 people can, yeah.
Thanks, Kranti. I'm Nelson here. Sipoy,
Hi,
I have
Nelson,
one question to you. That is, in terms of, let's talk, I mean, when we're talking about Sanskrit influence in a language, in Telugu or other places, and I mean, in your talk also, you kept referring to Tamil's project of desanskritization. I mean, held by, of course, influenced a lot by the Dravidian politics. But my question is, Tamil as a classical language has evolved independent of Sanskrit. I mean, its origins are not connected to Sanskrit as a language itself. But when it comes to other South Indian languages like Telugu, Malayalam, or Kannada, as far as I understand, it is also some combination of Tamil and Telugu in its origin itself. Tamil and Sanskrit in its origin itself. So a project like desanskritizing a language, is it even viable for other South Indian languages as a project? I mean, can we desanskritize Telugu? Is it even a viable project? Does Telugu have an origin independent of these languages? That's my question.
I think so, Nelson. Like if you see what happened with the language politics very deeply is like, you know, that Madras presidency, Telugus and Tamils were together, right? And Telugus really felt like that they have been cheated and politically, because Tamils were taking over the space of politics and business and economic opportunities. That's why Potti Sriramulu had to go. Like I was also having the same question. Like if there was this former colleague of mine in CIPS, Veerabhadrudu, I also asked him, right? Can you really think any other means of reviving the Telugu language? Because there is no much literary work, or there is no much poetry or any kind of, because we see in Tamil that they take it as a pride issue, right? To revive the language, to come up with it. He made a very absolute point. This is not my observation, but his, I'm just trying to say here, is he said that Telugus, when they want to separate, it also want to separate from Tamil, right? There was a lot of intermix of Tamil and Telugu, because like as a speaker of both the languages, I can see a lot of similarities with Tamil and Telugu, right? And for example, Kannada for that matter, and Malayalam for that matter. I would strongly believe the Dravidian languages were not only the Tamil, but also the Dravidian, other 4 Dravidian languages were also highly separate from the Sanskrit, right? And if you see the origins and the writings, the meanings, and so on. But what happened was, in order to come out of the Tamil clutches, they also wanted to have some other superior hegemonic form of things so that they can also claim superiority. I would see this as a Telugu's leaning towards Sanskrit, and they didn't put up much fight, right? Because if you see, most of the Telugu usages were highly Sanskritized, and they were okay with it because they wanted to have their own status apart from the Tamil. Because Tamil, I am very sure, was much overpowering on other languages, and it's similar with most of the other. I would also find most of the Malayalam being Sanskritized usages, right? I would see from those points. But I'm very sure if Tamil couldn't do it, Telugu can also do it, like completely getting desensitized. I don't think, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a linguist student. Maybe I'm like, but it is my strong belief that through revival movement, you can actually revive Telugu, because the paper that I just managed to get it published in Wire speaks about 8 or 9 forms of rainbow that is used in Telugu. Like, I was really surprised, because Harivellu, yes, I have heard about the term, and Indradhanasu, right? And the other terms, no. I was like, there is a lot of my friends from Telangana are reaching out to me saying Singidi, right? The beautiful usage of Singidi is in multiple cultural aspects, right? It is considered as a Batukamma. At the same time, it is considered as half bag. It is considered as an arch, right? It is considered as a combination of mere colors. You no need to refer to a rainbow. It can also be, say, colorful, right? It's an expression to use that you are colorful. Singidi lagu now, and that's it. It doesn't exactly mean rainbow, right? And it's like, I'm very sure the indigenous languages can revive themselves, but only through a constant and conscious political movements, I would say. That's my take. Maybe I'm wrong, Nelson. I don't know whether Telugu is completely out of, there is no touch with Sanskrit, but I would strongly believe, yes, they kind of move to adapting Sanskrit than subscribing it to Tamil. So that's the politics which you need to understand between the Dravidian politics. I don't think they have much of influence of Sanskrit. It's all they allowed it because you need another separate group in order to do so, right? So that's what I would say.
Thanks, Sepoy. So we can have Chandrasekhar now, and followed by Himadri.
Yeah, hi, Sareshwar, hi. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
Chandrasekhar,
you're
please.
audible.
Now, when it comes to Telugu film industry, see, this is owned by all these dominant caste people compared to Tamil industry. There is a drastic change in Tamil industry now. There are people, directors, producers, heroes, from Dalit and other subaltern communities. But when it comes to Telugu film industry, you won't find now at least I could see Karnakaran, like Palasa movie director. But apart him, I could not come across any director or producer or hero, main hero particularly from Dalit community. There was this Bob Mohan, but they used him for these comic characters, and they made fun of lower caste people through his character. And there was some movement in between. There was a director from Sudra community, like this movie you might know, this Jayam Manadera movie. Venkatesh Jayam Manadera movie, which talks little bit about caste and Dalit issue, but again it is from the point of view of dominant caste again. When this person made that movie, the hero is from Kamma caste or some dominant caste. Producer of that movie is from other caste. The whole thing. So except director, everybody is from dominant caste, but the cinema is about Dalits. So it seems this producer, Ashwini Dutt, Ashwini Dutt, right? So he had a conversation with this director after the movie saying, see, you are using all our people, our community people to take a movie of Dalits, how something like that. So there is no movement compared to Tamil industry. However, somebody is mentioning, at least we could see Kanchalapalem, Color Photo. Again, there are many problems if we do study these movies, text by text. But they compare. I mean, when it comes to Tamil, it is there is the hero, somebody like Dhanush or anybody for that matter, Rajnikant. It's in the hands of director making him to completely take that character, live into that character. We don't know how that is not there in Telugu. We have to see now. Venkatesh is acting in that Asuran movie. I don't know how what all things will be changed in that movie. That's one comment which I thought to add. And other thing is in Telugu industry, this celebrating caste name. Movies also contributed for this celebrating caste names, surnames, particularly Reddy, Naidu. In 90s when we were young, we could see Samarsimha Reddy. These Reddy movies and Naidu movies, they celebrated the pride of caste, and suddenly it's all about Reddy. Unconsciously, even many of these viewers from non-Reddy community, they used to tell, "Hey, Reddy, I'm Reddy, I'm Balakrishna fan, so I'm Samarsimha Reddy." So in a way, they did that politics also. They achieved that also, and that's the reason we could not see any, names onto the movie, like no names from Dalit communities or other marginalized communities for hero, or that also contributed to this thing. And other thing is, like, we are struggling now. Somebody was asking like we should remove the surnames, caste surnames, and you are mentioning that it is a kind of assertion. Keeping our caste names is a kind of assertion, particularly for Dalit communities. But I also say it is assertion one way, but it is also humiliation, because all throughout my academic life, my caste name carried, in our Central University, CFLU, HCU, wherever your name comes in results, or whatever way your name is visible, and many people come to see, they used to tell me in library, in CCL, "Oh, you are this caste? Okay." So it's a kind of humiliation also. Assertion 24/7 throughout your life, you can't do movement, right? You are living in village, you are living in a job place. I came to do job in these Godavari districts, and people are very cost conscious. And the moment you join, they have seen all my documents, and in my certificates, my caste name is carried, and they say, "Oh, this is your caste." Oh, I thought, okay, the student is your caste, this student is your caste, and they went and told the students, "No, he is your caste." So it's a kind of humiliation also, in a way. So we are trying to, now actually I have become a parent. Now my partner also is in the meeting. Both of us are from interstates, and we have become parents now. We are struggling to avoid this caste, to carry caste names. We don't want them to have, in a way, but there is also an opinion. People are saying, no, they will face, like, kids will face problem, dilemma. Their identity will be problem. They don't know which caste. I don't know, they will be keep asking in the future. But if we want to keep this humiliation carries, if we don't want to keep, there is also this problem in Telugu. You are there from Kadapa and Kurnool, so people, if you go to MRO, this MDO office, Mandal Revenue Office, to get certificates, they create problem, like your name is their caste and your kids do not have, and for that we need to go through this all entire process of the Priyadarshini told gazette, and changing names and all. So much struggle. Now we are realizing, like, we never thought of this. Naming will become such a big thing, such a troublesome thing, that we are realizing, my partner and me, we are realizing now. Not that much easy to take a step. Um, yeah, that's all I thought to add. Thank you.
True, Chandrasekhar. I completely agree with you. That's why I always had this opinion that we should do what we can within our own limitations. If someone wants to carry forward their caste with so much pride, it's their right to do so. If someone doesn't want to, it's their right to do so, right? And I agree what you are saying. It's that's what I'm saying. The system, is placed in that manner, which want to continue this, right? It doesn't want you to change. That's where MRO comes. That's where your school teacher comes. That's where your principal comes, right? One of my friend was having a different name, right? And the teacher miswrote it basically when he was entering the marks, and he had to go with that name for throughout his life. The intended name was separate. Another thing, because the parents and grandparents come from highly illiterate background, they couldn't even know what is being written in there. The teacher took it upon themselves to think or make this name very fashionable and wrote something else, right? It has changed the whole name at all, like name altogether to that person now is living with a name given by a teacher. As same as I would say Nelson Mandela, the South African leader, also lived with this Christian name, right, rather than the name given by their parents. I would say yes, you are right in naming so. And I also would like to lead you to see how like it has to be a put up as a resistance, I would say, right? Periyar again, or for that matter, the left in Tamil Nadu is I think leading the way in showing how we can completely confuse the people with these naming patterns at all, right? And in the article, I was also naming how Periyar took it upon, like gave the name of Moscow, right? And like I think we should go very wide in range of it, right? And confuse the people. It doesn't necessarily happens to fall into these conformities of what name is. It's okay. Let them get confused. I think they will find their own politics. If we are speaking from the children's point of view, I would say, yeah. Thank you, Chandrasekhar, for adding your viewpoints to this.
Thanks. Himadri, this is your turn.
Yeah.
Last question. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Sarveshwar. It's been a fabulous session. I actually got to learn a lot of things from you and also from the fabulous questions that were put forward by the other participants. My question is more from a viewpoint that I kind of have seen and I kind of hold also to some extent from what I see in Bengal. So there's a pattern in Bengal, especially in families. So this is slightly a digression from the caste-based discussion of naming children. So like in Bengal, especially earlier, there used to be families with, I mean, say when there used to be many children in those families, there used to be a pattern to the names that were given to these children. For example, the first child, they would have called him Pratham, or in Bengali, it's called Prothom. The last child, for example, they kind of realized that's it. We don't want to extend our family further. The child's name will be called Iti. Iti in Bengali means that's the end. Okay, so Iti is generally given to a daughter. I mean, and if that's when they kind of decide, that's it, they call it Iti. And even after that, there has been, the pattern has continued in terms of how the name of the child has got some relationship with the name of the child following or preceding him or her, especially in multi-children couples. So I just wanted to understand, say from the Telugu viewpoint, from the Tamil viewpoint, or from the overall viewpoint in terms of the literature, is this phenomena also observed in other parts of the country, apart from the caste-based phenomena that you widely talked about? Thank you.
No, I don't think so. Like my observations note this, but there is this one pattern which basically in few of the Rayalaseema families will have only Reddy names. For example, the other caste groups, not the Reddy caste groups, but not so lower in the caste ranks also. There is this god and goddesses who are called as Reddamma, Reddappa and all. They basically worship this particular god and get the child. So they would name the children after Reddy, right? So there is this neighbors of mine who is not a Reddy caste, and but their children's name, all of them, three sons is Reddy, right? Pedda Reddy, Chinna Reddy, Sanna Reddy. Like that is the kid is basically lean, so he was called Sanna Reddy, right? Pedda Reddy and Chinna Reddy were like big and small Reddy. So I came across this, but not like whether you want to put stop to further having children, you would call them Pratham and that sort of a thing. I don't know. I didn't come across this. It's a very interesting though to say. I think it's a reminder for yourself to not to reproduce more kids, that you want to name a kid after saying like it's enough. But that's
it's a reminder not only for the couple but also for the family members, maybe. I mean, who kind of have maybe other motivations.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Thanks, Himadri.
Thank you.
Actually, that just reminded me of a funny joke in Telugu, which says about the names of daughters. So you have like Gopika, Deepika, and then they say Apika, like stop it now. Chalika, enough. It's like, so there's this joke which goes saying that you have a lot of children and then you say like, end it now. So I think it's a funny, very funny way of looking at names and how you name a lot of children. So I think, with this, we come to an end to the session. Thanks a lot, Sepoy. It has been a wonderful discussion, and even the audience who joined in today have raised very interesting questions, have contributed very actively to the discussion. So I'm really glad. And this particular session is being recorded and it will also be uploaded to Radio Sophia YouTube channel. And for those who are interested to know a little bit about Telugu cinema and dealing with caste, we have a talk which was conducted last year around this time by Ravi Teja, a PhD scholar from HCU Sociology Department, which is also a wonderful talk, which gives an account of different movies. And actually, he also mentions one of the point which Sepoy mentioned about how the movie making is controlled by certain communities and certain groups of families, and how all aspects, production, distribution, etc., and how it has played its own role in shaping the kind of cinema that we see. So I think you can please go ahead and check that out also. And so thank you, Sepoy. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll just say the final words. Thank you so much for Radio Sophia team and for everyone for making this as a wonderful learning experience. Special thanks to Madri and Kranti for providing this opportunity. And it was wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. So I'll be ending the meeting now. See you all next week with an interesting session.